Here.
Commissioner Reinert.
Here.
Commissioner Schulte.
Here.
Commissioner Look.
Here.
Commissioner Gamache.
Here.
Commissioner Jepson.
Here.
Commissioner Meisner.
Here.
All present and accounted for. We'll move on to tax claims and abatements. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Brasted.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Schulte. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Reinert.
Aye.
Commissioner Schulte.
Aye.
Commissioner Look.
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache.
Aye.
Commissioner Jepson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner.
Aye.
Commissioner Brasted.
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 5, which is consider accepting the regular claims paid over $500 and purchase card claims paid for the period ending September 28th, 2023. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Schulte.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Gamache. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Schulte.
Aye.
Commissioner Look.
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache.
Aye.
Commissioner Jepson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner.
Aye.
Commissioner Brasted.
Aye.
Commissioner Reinert.
Aye.
And that also passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 6, which is the approval of minutes for the September 12th, 2023 County Board meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Jepson, second by Commissioner Meisner. Any changes, additions, subtractions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those meeting minutes are adopted. Item 7, under Chair's remarks, we have 2 items today. The first is to recognize the Midwest Regional Forensic Laboratory, which is a cooperative agreement between Anoka, Wright, and Sherburne counties, and is housed at the Anoka County Sheriff's Office. We're recognizing them today for recently winning their 4th consecutive Project Foresight Maximus Award, which is given to laboratories operating at 90% or better of peak efficiency. I have Commissioner Brasted, Chair of Public Safety here, and she'll tell us more about the award and introduce our special guests.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're honored and truly excited to have our Midwest Regional Forensics Lab recognized by the American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors with this prestigious award. It's amazing to win this award once, let alone 4 times in a row. The Maximus Award is given to the top 15 performing forensics laboratories in the world, and our laboratory is the only one in the state of Minnesota to receive this award this year. Participation in the Foresight program is voluntary. Faculty from West Virginia John Chambers College of Business and Economics analyze data from forensics crime laboratories to identify trends and evaluate individual lab performance. The fact that our laboratory has received this award 4 times consecutively is a testament to the work of the staff there. They take immense pride in serving crime victims, and they skillfully provide lab services that are essential to solving crimes. Joining us today to tell us more about this award and our great partnership with neighboring counties is Anoka County Sheriff Brad Wise and Scott Ford, who is the director of the Midwest Forensics Lab, and they will introduce our colleagues from Wright and Sherburne County. Welcome, you guys.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Chair. Yes, the introductions are the important piece in all this, because truly most of the credit belongs to this man to my left, Scott Ford, who is the lab director. He provides the leadership within that organization that led to the achievement of this particular award. But to my left also is Chief Deputy Steve Duran from Sherburne County. And to my right is Captain Eric Kunkel from Wright County Sheriff's Office. I do want to give the taxpayers a little bit of a backdrop, though, on the organization itself, and because I think in part they're going to get why we're here to accept this award. But in 2008, the Anoka County Sheriff's Office, Wright County, and Sherburne counties entered into a cooperative agreement to create the Midwest Regional Forensics Laboratory. The purpose was for financial efficiency. It's good for counties to merge and join forces in efforts like this. Our 3 counties recognize the need for forensic services, committed to serving our citizens. Of course, TV shows like CSI and so on raise expectations, but that's a good thing, because when you're a victim of a crime, you want your crime solved, and labs play a key role in that happening. So when you talk about our lab receiving an award, our citizens can know that what that means, where the rubber meets the road, means that their crimes get solved at a higher rate than other places, and that's what people want. So specifically, you mentioned the American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors, which is this association that granted this award. But it's a nonprofit professional society of lab directors dedicated to providing excellence in forensic services through leadership and innovation. The purpose of the organization is to foster professional interests, assist the development of laboratory management principles and techniques, and to promote, encourage, and maintain the highest standards of practice in the field. Maximus Award-winning laboratories are organizations performing at the highest level, improving efficiency, reducing turnover, which is time. Justice delayed is justice denied. People have heard that often, but we strive to turn these cases over quickly to get a resolution for our victims, and to reconsider the strategic priorities of improving the justice system. So with that said, I'm honored to be the person that gets to speak about our lab. The reality is that I do nothing but watch the great work that Scott Ford and his team do, because in the end, while the organization receives the award, the reality is, I'll speak for him in this regard. The reality is it's his team that delivers. He provides a leadership, but they deliver, and I'm proud to be part of an organization that does it in this way for the taxpayers of Anoka County. So thank you for the opportunity, and they're winning this award. Thank you. Thanks.
Us today, and thank you for more information on this. It's certainly helpful for those that are watching here this morning. And this is about your dedication really to victims of crime, and we appreciate that very much. The work you do cannot be understated. It's tedious, it's time-consuming, and without this service, there'd be so many crimes that go unsolved. And so congratulations to the laboratory for your hard work. We appreciate your hard work and the value and the service that you give to our constituents. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item 2, which is we're thrilled to recognize exceptional achievements of the Anoka County Job Training Center and its dedicated staff to the outstanding work in revolutionizing the customer service experience within the Job Training Center program application process. I'll turn it over to Human Services Committee Chair Jeff Reinert to lead our recognition today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am very proud to announce the Minnesota Association of Workforce Boards recently awarded our Job Training Center first place in their prestigious 2023 Promising Practices Awards for the JTC's development of their online inquiry system. Our JTC staff saw an opportunity to improve the customer's experience and simultaneously create efficiency within the program application process. Working in tandem with our information technology programmers to develop this innovative approach, the online inquiry system has not only streamlined operations, but also greatly enhanced the overall journey of individuals seeking assistance. The positive outcomes resulting from this initiative have been nothing short of remarkable. ACJTC has reported a higher rate of complete applications, a reduction in processing time, and an overall improvement in the efficiency of its internal workflow, just to name a few. Joining us to tell us more, this award-winning effort is Nicole Swenson, Director of the Anoka County Job Training Center. Nicole?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. It's my honor, and I'm very humbled to be representing the Job Training Center along with several colleagues from the Job Training Center and also IT. This was an exciting initiative when we took this as a continuous improvement opportunity pre-COVID. And as you noted, we have seen an outstanding response from our community, both job seekers and businesses. So I'm here today with Amy DeMond and David Assemacher from the Job Training Center, along with our colleague Charles Kolstad from Information Technology. This project included partners. It included other county departments that sat down and really took a look at what our business needs are, what our mission is, and where we needed to be. And again, having this opportunity and this innovation with the team pre-COVID, we were able to put it in use almost immediately once COVID hit. So again, as you can see, that is the kiosk that's located in our career lab. And again, we are seeing a continued increase of customers outside of the Job Training Center, whether they're in Anoka County or other surrounding areas, connect with us. And typically within 24 hours, they're being connected either on the phone or virtually or in person by a highly skilled career counselor. So again, I'm here representing the great work of the staff and the team and just very, very humbled by the award. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Schulte and Commissioner Meisner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Nicole, for all you do for Anoka County and job training in this case. I have the privilege and honor of serving as the president of the Minnesota Association of Workforce Boards and was thrilled to be able to present you and Anoka County with this award. It truly represents the strength of the Anoka County system in that there are 16 workforce boards across the state and 87 counties, and we stood out as a promising practice award. And it lives up to our tagline, the respectful, innovative, and fiscally responsible things that Anoka County does. And I want to thank you for that and remind everybody that September is Workforce Development Month. And that's a really important thing because that's what connects our job seekers to our job providers. And it serves both parties. Job providers right now need more help than job seekers. And it's our job to make that happen. And thanks to the good folks at our JTC that we can make that happen, and Nicole for your leadership there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Meisner.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for those comments too, Commissioner Schulte. So I was lucky, I was able to serve on the Workforce Development Board for my first 4 years. And Nicole, you have such a great statement about it, right? And you've always said work is good for everyone. It just is a matter of how much and what kind. And so what you guys are doing right now is exactly that. And then to Commissioner Schulte's point, it is about employers and employees, but both of those have to work together, and there's always a shift of what is more challenged. But anyway, so thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, the number one thing we hear is the workforce challenges that are out there right now. And so the work you do is so important. And certainly congratulations to you, Nicole, and the entire team for this initiative and for winning a statewide award. I mean, outstanding work. The Job Training Center's online inquiry system represents an exemplary approach to workforce development and one that not only enhances customer experience, but also yields tangible benefits for job seekers and the broader community. This award from the Minnesota Association Workforce Board recognizes the dedication, innovation, and impact of this team in creating a more efficient and person-centered approach to workforce development. We just want to, as a county board, thank you for shining a spotlight on the good work you do and the help that you provide our constituents out there. So we deeply appreciate it. So
Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. Okay, that concludes Chair's remarks. We will move on to committee reports, and we will start off with the Finance Committee. And we have a couple of action items to be considered here this morning. The first is the committee recommends the county board approve a new capital asset policy to replace the current fixed asset policy within the Anoka County financial system here. And you'll see that some of the changes that are on there is basically updating the policy to reflect adjusted categories, threshold for capitalization of equipment to go from 10,000 to 25,000, a change in improvements other than buildings to be adjusted from 25,000 to 100,000. And again, these increases help reduce staff time in having to report this, the smaller detailed items, and so this helps our staff definitely. And reducing administration cost. And then also there's just an update in definitions to standardize for best practices that are out there. So with that, the first item, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Brasted,
Second.
second by Commissioner Jepson. Discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. The second item is the committee recommends the county board approve an amendment to the Anoka County investment policy within the Anoka County financial policies. And essentially, there's a couple of updates here that are happening, but the major part of it is with the current 2023 legislative session, we are now able to invest in CDs, whereas we were not able to before, and that gives, or maybe we were able to before, but it's certainly in accordance with the new Minnesota statute. And then it's updating comprehensive annual financial report and other documentation in there. So pretty straightforward there. Is there a motion to approve item 2?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Commissioner Schulte. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jepson. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. And then we'll move on to item 3, which is the committee recommends the county board approve amendments to the Anoka County travel, meals, and general expense reimbursement policy within the Anoka County financial policies. Effective January 1st, 2023, you will see that for quite a few years, there has not been any increase in travel allotment, and due to inflation, we're seeing significant increases out there right now. We generally go to 2 conferences, the legislative conference in Washington DC for NACO, and then a summer conference, and do work in those 2 conferences. Some of us sit on different boards there. But at any rate, those 2 alone exceed the current allotted amount in terms of cost to go there. So this is increasing from $5,000 to $7,500, and again, if it's not spent, it just rolls over into the following year or so. Is there a motion to approve item 3?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Meisner.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jepson. Discussion. Commissioner Schulte.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I won't be supporting this. We've asked our employees to cut back on travel. We've asked them to trim their budgets. We've asked them to do a lot of different things to make sure we can exercise a reasonable levy. And I just don't feel this is setting the right example. I understand inflation is hit. It's hit for everybody on every level. I just think that there's better timing for this, and I'm willing to wait to a different time. So I'll be voting against this, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Reiner.
Yeah, I will be supporting this. You know, we do have to travel for the jobs that we have here. Since this was last increased, inflation has gone up 41%. If you apply that percentage to the amount that is currently available, and just even in the recent years of inflation, that would bring it up to over $7,000. When we set policies like this, we don't set it for the current time. We try to set it for you know, a few years past this point, so that we don't have to come back to this every year. And so, just economically, looking at the inflation that has taken place since the last increase has been put in place, that would bring us well past $7,000. It's been a 41% increase. And of course, you know, we'd have to pay for these on our own, and unless you're suggesting, Commissioner Schulte, that you know, I guess employees start paying for their own trips when they go to conferences, I guess I'd have to agree with you. But today I'm going to disagree with you and raise this up, because we do have to travel to do our jobs.
Commissioner Meisner.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate your commentary, Commissioner Schulte, because in work sessions, I think we all struggled with this and the timing, or I'll just speak for myself. I did as well, and so you make really good points, as well as other commissioners. And I guess really just my opinion is that I agree with you. We are asking staff to do a lot, and I don't think that we should. I think we should afford them the same things that we need to do in order to do our jobs. But I do appreciate your comments. Thank you.
I will remind people this is for a budget, and this does not increase the normal travel that we have already historically done, and it really is designed to cover the costs, and so that is why it needs to be somewhat adjusted based on what we're seeing out there in the marketplace for airfare, hotels, et cetera. I remember when hotels were like $100 a night. Now they're $250 a night, or whatever the deal is. Where, you know, certainly in Washington D.C., but it's getting crazy, certainly from an inflationary standpoint. Commissioner Brasted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too will not support this today. I mean, we have asked departments to do a 2% budget reduction exercise to assist us within this budget that we'll be voting on later on in this meeting. And we have asked them, you know, just because conferences are available doesn't mean that they have to attend every single conference. And I think that it does not look good on the commissioner's behalf, that some people have exceeded their limits that are set out and now want to make this adjustment retroactively. I think that we should lead by example and choose and be very picky about what conferences we travel to and attend as well. I can't support it. I think the look is not good. So that's my 2 cents.
Commissioner Reiner?
Yeah, I don't believe this request is retroactive. I believe that this is for 2024. Is that correct?
Retroactive to January
That's
23.
retroactive, right in the makeup.
Okay. Well, I think we probably have enough in the budget for this year. But, yeah, like I said, inflation has increased the price of these things by 41%.
Commissioner Jepson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I do appreciate the comments regarding the optics not just the optics, the reality of what staff will interpret from this decision. If I was staff and was asked to cut my budget by 2% and then commissioners said, oh, but we're going to increase our travel, that's not nice. That's not good. That's not a good way to run this organization. Therefore, I am in support of this because it was brought to my attention after I had gotten above the 5,000 threshold. Unbeknownst to me that it was there, shame on me for not reading the full policy, but I was not informed of this until after I had gone over. So yes, being retroactive through no intentional fault of my own, this occurred. And I do think we need to make it retroactive just because, I mean, come the end of the year, yes, I'm gonna have to pay out of pocket for conferences that in my first year of learning this role, I've gone over that 5,000 through no fault of my own, through no selfishness of my own. But to the optics of how staff might look at this, I'm also not going to support the 2% service reductions because I don't feel that we need to hold ourselves the same accountability to the staff. And if we're going to increase our budgets, we can't ask staff to decrease their budgets. So just wanted to mention that. So yes, I am going to be in support of this. Thank you.
Commissioner Meisner?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll try not to belabor the conversation. And then correct me if I'm wrong, but Commissioner Brasted, and she made those comments in the work session. So again, just for transparency's sake, I do appreciate us talking about this out loud. But then just for the public's edification as well. So it's allotted per commissioner, but it also goes into a pool. So if there are, as Commissioner Brasted said, not every commissioner has to decide to go every conference, and not every commissioner does. Like, we all kind of get to decide that. Commissioner Brasted doesn't use, I think it was like $400 of her budget. So whatever she doesn't use or any other commissioner doesn't use is in this pool to help then, I guess, negate or balance some of the other commissioners that do choose to do, more travel. So I did just want to point that out in terms of just education for the public. But to Commissioner Jepson's point, I believe that this had never happened before, Administrator Sivaraja, in terms of no one was informed because we'd never been in this situation where the behavior is the same and it was the prices that had changed. So thank you.
Okay, further discussion? Commissioner Reiner?
Well, I just want to say for the record, I am in support of this, but my budget personally is well below what is allowed for this year, and I will not exceed the current level. But I do just like to take care of business. I mean, it's obvious that inflation has run away and that it's not been increased, and it's gone up 41% since the last increase. I like to just take care of business. I don't care about the optics. We got to do our jobs, and I just, think this is one of those things some people can play games with. So we just need to increase it because costs have gone up, period.
Okay. Without further discussion, roll call vote.
Commissioner Look,
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache,
Aye.
Commissioner Jepson,
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner,
Aye.
Commissioner Brasted,
Opposed.
Commissioner Reiner,
Aye.
Commissioner Schulte.
Opposed.
Okay, that passes with 2 in opposition. And that will conclude the Finance Committee report. We will move on to Human Services Committee report and Commissioner Reiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My committee met on September 19th, and there was no public comment. There are a couple of consent agenda items that we can consider. Ask questions if you need to, otherwise we'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay, it's moved by Commissioner Jepson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Meisner. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Gamache.
Aye.
Commissioner Jepson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner.
Aye.
Commissioner Brassad.
Aye.
Commissioner Reinert.
Aye.
Commissioner Schulte.
Aye.
Commissioner Look.
Aye. And that passes unanimously on to 3.
All right, item number 3, and now we're into community corrections. We'd like the board to consider to enter into contract number C0010243. This is a renewal with Conscious Healing Consulting for individual trauma-based therapy, mental health staff training, and case and program consultation. We're really happy to be able to do business with this company because they're the only one around. At the prices that this market pays, there's just not a lot of people willing to do this, and so they do a great job for us, and we're happy to be doing business with them. This contract is for $200,000 1 year, or I should say not to exceed $200,000 is for 1 year, and the funding source is the county and also other counties at a per diem rate.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Jepson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Meisner. Discussion? Yes, Commissioner Jepson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as Commissioner Reinert commented that there's not many of these organizations around, I do also want to add that this is an extraordinary organization. I've professionally worked with them in the past, and their services are very high level, their quality of the work, their reputation within the community. So we're not just choosing one because of lack of availability. We're choosing this one because of the professionalism and the services that they do provide to those who need them. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion?
Yeah, I guess I'd add to that too. Yes, we wouldn't be doing business with them if they did not do the job. But they do a fantastic job for us.
Okay. If no further discussion, roll call vote.
Commissioner Jepson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner.
Aye.
Commissioner Brassad.
Aye.
Commissioner Reinert.
Aye.
Commissioner Schulte.
Aye.
Commissioner Look.
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Item 4.
Item 4, and we're going to move over into Job Training Center. This is to consider the board apply for and accept Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. That's a deed grant, contract number C0010233. And this is for to help decrease racial and economic disparities in adult populations and give them training. The kind of training I guess we can expect from this, you know, basically getting people, it's basically helping them into the workforce and, you know, getting them Class B driver's license, you know, for some jobs that are out there in that industry right now, which is hurting manufacturing, welding, machine operation, et cetera, things like this. And so it's a $400,000 grant. It's 2 years and it's state funded.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Schulte. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Commissioner Jepson. Discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Brassad.
Aye.
Commissioner Reinert.
Aye.
Commissioner Schulte.
Aye.
Commissioner Look.
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache.
Aye.
Commissioner Jepson.
Aye.
And that passes with 6 of the 7 commissioners, with 1 being absent. Moving on to item 5.
Item 5, still in Job Training Center, and the committee recommends that the board adopt resolution number 2023 HS13, and this is accepting gifts for human services, and it's $3,850, and I'd like to read the donors. It's the American Legion Auxiliary, ANOCA, I should say, American Legion Auxiliary, Centered Health Chiropractic, Central Spirits Liquor, Coon Rapids Superior Senior Club. I like that, Superior Senior Club. Coon Rapids Veterans of Foreign Wars, Fridley Lions Club, Graphic Finishing Services, Midwest Best Water Sales, Old Piper Inn, and Waste Connections. Last year when we got some donations in, we used them to help underprivileged kids go to camp, and I think we were able to send 52 kids, and I think that this money is going to be steered towards that same benefit this year. And I guess we're looking for a motion.
Is there an offer of the resolution?
I'll offer the resolution.
Resolution's been offered by Commissioner Jepson. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes.
The rest of my report is informational, and that completes my report. Mr. Chair, back to you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reiner. We'll move on to the Information Technology Committee report, and Commissioner Gamache.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The IT committee met on September 19th. We have one action item before us today. The IT committee is bringing before the county board to approve a contract 2010-239E C000133-8E, the Fifth Amendment to the Master Services Agreement with Zayo Group. This is a contract in the amount of $255,000 with a change order of $25,500, excuse me. Yeah, with a change order of $25,500, and that's not to exceed the $280,500, okay. This is for some work that needs to be done. It is recommended to construct and install all hardware and fiber optics with the capabilities of 100 gigabytes bandwidth to provide redundant network connectivity and voice connection at established network speed requirements. The Zayo fiber network is essential for positioning the county for future growth, network operational efficiency, and redundant connection into the Emergency Communications Center, the 911 Center, and Radio Shop. So we're moving this forward and getting this work done with Zayo one more time. And I'm looking for a motion to approve this and move forward.
Is there a motion? I'm sorry?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Reiner. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Brasted. Discussion. Commissioner Schulte.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. I fully support this. This is the right thing to do. It keeps us, gets our new building hooked up, and it keeps a redundant line in case there's a fracture in the line somewhere. We've got a reverse loop that'll work. Our bigger issue is coming up in the next few years when our Zayo contracts run out. Right now, we're paying $1 per building for 240-some buildings. That will change to a substantial number for every building. That number's not been released yet, at least not intentionally, so we don't have that number. But we have a decision. We don't need to go with Zayo. There are other options that we can work through, and I think it's prudent that we all start thinking about that and working with IT to make sure that we gave them a lot of lead time to figure out what our best route's going to be. I think that date is 2028 or 2030.
2030, I think.
2030 is our date, so we've got a while, but trust me, that's going to go by really fast when it comes to making these decisions. So I just implore everybody to dig in a little deeper on that subject and ask a lot of questions so we can get the answers we need ahead of time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further comments? All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Brasted.
Aye.
Commissioner Reiner.
Aye.
Commissioner Schulte.
Aye.
Commissioner Look.
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache.
Aye.
Commissioner Jepson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner.
Aye.
That passes unanimously.
And that was all we had, except I wanted to thank our IT staff for the fine work they did back on 9/11, it was actually, where we changed over our email address system. We are now AnokaCountyMN.gov, which was a big project, and it was handled with, well, from at least my standpoint, zero issues. It went really, really well. So I appreciate all the hard work that they put in for that, and we just appreciate that it got done. In this time of where you have all these IT things happening and people, you hear about it all the time on television and radio of breaches and everything, our team is right on top of things, and just want to thank them all for the hard work they're doing right now in difficult situations of cybersecurity and everything else. So good work, and that concludes my report.
Commissioner Meisner.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and just to, I guess, build on what Commissioner Gamache was saying about our email change. So the reason that we did it for .gov was, in fact, for security reasons. So just stating that, so it's a full circle then for IT, both implementation and for making us secure. But I also believe all county government in the state of Minnesota went to .gov, if I'm understanding that correctly as well.
Some haven't yet, but they're getting there.
Well, yeah, we were the first, or one of the first, for sure. Yes.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, Commissioner Gamache. We'll go on to the Public Safety Committee report, and Commissioner Brasted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Public Safety Committee met on September 12th, and there's just two action items today. The first is that the committee recommends approval and execution of a contract for the purchase of service agreement for food management and laundry services for the Anoka County Jail Facility with Aramark Correctional Service for a fixed cost per service unit provided for a term of January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024, with the option to renew for 4 additional 12-month periods. We went out for an RFP. We had 2 companies put in a proposal. Aramark was the best option, the lowest option, and we've worked with them in the past. So I would be happy to make a motion for this contract.
Second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Brassad, second by Commissioner Schulte. Discussion on this one? I see that they have the percentages established for future years.
Correct.
Okay, so at least we know
The max.
if that'll be reasonable or not for the extension. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Reinert,
Aye.
Commissioner Schulte.
Aye.
Commissioner Look.
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache.
Aye.
Commissioner Jepson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner.
Aye.
Commissioner Brassad.
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. Item 2.
Although it says emergency management, this is actually under our county attorney's office. And this is, the committee recommends adoption of a resolution authorizing the acceptance of a grant from the Minnesota Department of Public Safety Office of Justice Programs in the amount of $139,514. This is for prosecutor-based crime victim services in Anoka County.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll offer the resolution.
The officers, resolution's been offered by Commissioner Schulte. Is there any discussion? Seeing any discussion from our county attorney? No? No? Okay, very good. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Schulte.
Aye.
Commissioner Look.
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache.
Aye.
Commissioner Jepson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner.
Aye.
Commissioner Brassad.
Aye.
Commissioner Reinert.
Aye.
And that concludes my public safety report.
Thank you, Commissioner Brassad. That passed unanimously, and we'll move on to item 9, which is a resolution adopting a proposed property tax levy for program year 2024. Is there an offer of the resolution? I will offer the resolution. Discussion. Commissioner Reiner.
Yeah, I will not be supporting this. Even in the, budget materials that we got, staff was only asking for an 11, 12% increase. We're going to be, proposing 15% here. So it's kind of off the rails for me. Although, there was some talk. I mean, we've got in excess of $50 million in surplus dollars that wasn't talked about much as being used for offsetting what might be voted on today. I think the only people that were in support of that was myself and Commissioner Brassad. Hopefully there's going to be more discussion about that. Government budgets shouldn't have peaks and valleys. We ran into a peak here. We need to bring that peak down. We do have over $50 million in tax money that we took from the residents and didn't spend. So those dollars are surplus and can be used to smooth off this peak, and hopefully that is the result after more meetings that we'll have after tonight.
Yeah, and just so I remind folks at home, this is the initial setting of the property tax levy. We are required by statute to set it at this date, but we can change it. And we will be certainly working to change this as best we can here. So to Commissioner Reinert's comments, if there's dollars that we want to use to help reduce this, we have that option as of yet, and this doesn't necessarily lock us into this. The policy that we've used in the past, though, is we generally do not use surplus dollars for ongoing expenses, because what happens is once those surplus dollars are exhausted, you have to then levy that plus the increase the following year, which makes the peaks and valleys essentially that I think some people don't like. But at any rate, I got Commissioner Meisner next.
Did you have a follow-up comment, though?
Well, I just want to follow up on, the using of the surplus dollars. And, we have surpluses every single year. Almost seems planned. But we do have surplus every single year. And I've been here enough years to see what the pattern now is of the county budgeting, tax collection, and at the end of the year, we always have surplus, and it's many millions of dollars. And so to not expect, you're talking about one-time use, one-time use of these funds. Well, it's not one time if it happens every year, and it does happen every year the way that things are administered right now.
That part is true. We used one-time dollars last budget cycle, and we came into this budget cycle with an $18 million deficit because of that. And I don't think that's necessarily a good way to budget coming in with
follow up?
deficit, so.
Actually, we wanted to use, or actually instructed staff to use 12 million of those dollars and only used 5. And so there's actually $7 million of those dollars. You want to get into this, we can. There was $7 million of those dollars left over that we could apply to and could have applied to the budget, but didn't. And now we're going to be talking about increasing the budget by 15%, and that's ridiculous.
Okay, noted. Commissioner Meisner.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I mean, this budgetary year was extremely difficult. Again, I will just speak for myself, but I think it's hard for all of us. Well, so first of all, I just want to thank you, Chair Look, for, really leading these difficult budgetary discussions that we've had now for several months. You yourself have said, quote unquote, we have to stop kicking the can down the road and fix this problem, which is why we are talking about these numbers today. So I appreciate that. And I really appreciate too your comments and your commitment to supporting what I consider a very drastic levy increase, again, to fix this problem. So, excuse me, fiscally responsible, this is one of our county pillars. And I know that a lot of us kind of interpret that as less taxes or no taxes. But for me, this also means being responsible for the consequences of our budgetary decisions. So I own this. I own where we're at today because I'm a member of this board, and the decisions that we've made in the past has brought us to today and are making these very difficult decisions. But again, as you mentioned, Chair, look, now we have to fix this problem. So the budget, proposed budget today, it does include funding to do any sort of union wage contracts. And then it also includes service reductions. Commissioner Brasted alluded to that earlier on a different motion, but this does include some service reductions. So in my opinion, there is no need or reason for implementing these service reductions that we asked all of our department heads to identify. And the reason it doesn't make sense for me are a couple of different reasons. The actual dollar amount of what it added up to, it is not helpful to our overall budget challenges. Again, which we are here today because of a 0% levy increase over consecutive years. So it's just a fact and why we're here today. This service reduction could and may also disproportionately affect my community, District 7, which is Fridley, Hilltop, Columbia Heights. I do represent the most urban and most diverse district in the county, so it often affects community members differently than the rest of the county. I've read all the comments of the department heads of these service reductions. So reading them, in my opinion, this is death by 1,000 cuts. So we need to maintain our levels of service to the public, and we have to give the resources to our staff so they can do their jobs. $1 million in an over $300 million budget and a $163 million levy, cutting that, it's pointless. It's not, it doesn't help our overall challenge. So today, I would like to make a motion to amend this current resolution by changing the total levy amount to $164,967,160 to maintain all service levels in 2024. Now, this ends up being less than 0.8% increase. I have worked with Corey, so these numbers are accurate. They are up to date. I also have other percentages if anyone is interested in those, but that is the total levy amount that I would like to make an amendment for today.
So
Thank
it's a
you.
motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Commissioner Jepson. Moved by Commissioner Meiser, seconded by Commissioner Jepson. So now we have discussion on the amendment only. And Commissioner Schulte.
Mr. Chair, for clarity then, the levy goes from 15.44 to 16.24?
It goes to 16.23 is the percentage that I was told, and I see Corey is shaking his head. So that is correct. So we'd be moving it today from. Nodding his head. I'm sorry, nodding his head. Thank you. He was nodding his head in affirmation. We're going then from 15.44, which is on the current resolution. I am recommending asking for the amendment to correct 16.23%. Again, this is the cap. We can always move down.
You have a follow-up, Commissioner Schulte?
No, just a simple question with a simple answer is good.
Okay, any more? Yes, Commissioner Jepson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I seconded this motion because I think it deserves time to have conversation. Unfortunately, I will not be supporting this motion because I feel that though I agree with Commissioner Meisner that the 2% service reduction should not be impacted through this budget, I feel that there are other mechanisms rather than increasing the levy amount to allow that to happen. I think at this point, I do believe that the levy amount, talking about the amendment, so that's my position.
Commissioner Gamache on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes. When you have these reductions that are requested from staff over in a budget, there's a number of different things that are included in there. And I would say there were some things that were positive that were probably worthwhile to do. So I would not include that either. I think there is, Commissioner as Commissioner Jepson said, there are other options later on down the line between now and December where we can reduce some of those things, take some of those out, and fix it that way.
Commissioner Meisner.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, all of these are true. So between now and December, we can hash out the details. But my conversations with Corey is if I don't try to do this today, then it is not included in the it's not an option to be included in the levy. Again, we can bring this percentage down, but otherwise the other options mean the surplus or asset preservation, in which you just stated, Commissioner Look, that's not the best way to do it. So I'm not saying that's my understanding is that would be the only way to do it. And so I just want this board to have options. And if we are in the year of fixing the problem, then I just want to make sure that every option is available to us to fix the problem. And again, we have December to figure out both the percentage and what that looks like.
Further discussion on the amendment. Commissioner Reiner.
Yeah, I guess for some clarification, you're saying that if you don't do this, then all those things that have been identified, there's no chance of them coming back into the budget and be funded. I think that you can. I think that you could, during future budget sessions that we have, you can bring up, specific things and say, I'd like to have this funded, and I'd like to have it funded, X way. If you find some funding and want, you have some projects that you want to put back in, I think you can do that. Is that not correct?
Commissioner Meisner.
No, and thank you for those comments, because in the work sessions, we talked about what does this mean, and you're right, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the entire board is no, of course, we're not going to stop the funding permanently. We talked about it more in terms of pausing, right? Pausing for a year, which, okay, I understand that position. However, I just disagree with it. I don't believe that we should be pausing services to the public. I believe we should be maintaining services to the public. So, if you don't agree, don't vote for my amendment, but that is my position.
Commissioner Breasted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a little sticker shocked because we're not only on the agenda was a 15.44% increase. We're now looking for an amendment to 16.23. Crazy.
Okay. Commissioner Reiner.
Yeah, I just want to comment. I do believe, though, with items that you want to bring back, and I'll just say it again, you can come back to the group, in future budget meetings and make argument for why those should, and if you convince the group, then we can then, as a group, put them back in. I believe that's an option.
Commissioner Meisner, and then Commissioner Schulte.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely, there are options. Again, I want us to do things in a sustainable, stable way, and for us to have the option for full discussion and all the options available to us.
Commissioner Schulte.
Yeah, and just for clarity, I was going to state that we can modify the budget all we want in the next couple of months, but we cannot raise the levy. Whatever we set it at today is its maximum. We can certainly come down by our December meeting, but we can shift the budget. We can change a lot of things. Just wanted to make sure everybody was clear on that.
Okay, so there's been a couple of comments that have been made here this morning. The first of which is, I'm going to touch on is the sustainable way discussion of this budget. We've had spending in the past that has tails coming forward to today.
Is this to the amendment?
Yeah, sorry. Good point, good point.
Just curious, because I have a lot of comments yet I haven't made.
Yes, I was commenting on the sustainable part of her statement, so you're right, that is bleeding over into the other one. So we will keep it at the amendment. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I'm going to do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Look,
No.
Commissioner Gamache,
No.
Commissioner Jepson,
No.
Commissioner Meisner,
Aye.
Commissioner Brassad,
No.
Commissioner Reinert.
No.
Commissioner Schulte.
No.
Okay, that amendment fails. Now we are back on the resolution for the proposed property tax levy for program year 2024. And I will make my comments here. Essentially, there's discussion about sustainable way. We've had a budget that reflects what I'm going to call past spending that has essentially come forward now into this budget. And I want to break this down a little bit. There is active spending and inactive spending, or direct or indirect, or however you want to look at it, but the inflation would be somewhat of an indirect spending. We have cost of fuel, cost of electricity, cost of just about everything out there that has gone up through the roof. It doesn't take anyone 5 seconds to go out into the real world right now. Go and fill up a bag of groceries and find out how much you're paying for it. Or go to an electrical supply house and figure out how much that wiring is now gonna cost you. I mean, if you're doing any bids on your house today for projects, the costs are right through the roof. Everybody knows it. As is the cost for Anoka County, right through the roof. And we have to account for that inflation. We also made a decision last year on salary adjustments with the Helios contract. Some of us agreed to it, some of us opposed it, but as a board, we approved it. And that brought forward the expenses this year. That accounts for probably 50% or more of this discussion here today. We've had an increase in violent crimes, and we're given the introduction of the fact that we do not have enough staff to cover, from a county attorney standpoint, to cover the prosecution in the time frame needed to prosecute these people. So what does that mean? If you don't prosecute in time, you meet a statute of limitations, they no longer can be prosecuted. That's a public safety issue. We cannot put our people in harm's way in that regard. If there's a prosecution that needs to happen for violent crimes, it needs to happen judiciously and quickly. So essentially, there's a significant amount of money that we'll be investing in our county attorney's office that arguably hasn't been invested in the past, and largely may not have had those same concerns back then as we do today. We've invested in a 911 center people are aware of, currently being built today. That's going to service the entire county. Those costs are attributed somewhat in this budget in terms of bonding that will be required. We're able to use some ARPA dollars. Thank you. I was thinking CARES. ARPA dollars for that, and that helps to soften the blow, certainly. And this budget doesn't even take into account a jail discussion or a parking ramp replacement discussion or anything of that nature. And so if we were to have spent money on those two items, it would have been higher than 15.44% because you pay for what you spend. It's somewhat like getting a credit card statement at the end of the month. And you look at it and you think, man alive, did they calculate this wrong? No, they calculated it right, and you're gonna pay for it, every last penny of it. So essentially, this is what, in this discussion of sustainable way, This has to be what this budget is to sustain the spending that's happened. Now, it doesn't matter if you agree or disagree with the spending's been spent, done. You got to pay for it now, and this is one way to do it. There is also this talk of we're here because of a zero levy increase over the last 3 years. We have come through a very difficult time in these last three years, through COVID, through furloughs, through loss of jobs, through everything else that's happened. People have absolutely been hurting out there, and we were able to creatively come in with a zero levy, 0% increase levy. And that has kept our budget flat for 3 years essentially. And that's a good thing. That has helped people out in very difficult times. We could have taken the opposite approach, some of who advocated for it. Let's increase for the sake of increase. And then people get that property tax statement and they say, wow, the county increased, the school increased, the city increased, the state increased, the feds increased, everybody increased. My inflation has gone up on top of it. How am I going to make ends meet? Okay? These are real concerns that people have out there, and we need to be cognizant of those concerns and sympathetic to those concerns, and we certainly were for the last 3 years. Now, that being said, I've always been very transparent about the fact that I will roll in with a flat levy or flat budget when we can. And when there are absolute needs, we have to increase taxes because guess what? Government doesn't make money. Well, aside from some of the investments that we have out there. But that helps offset our budget. But we don't make money. We levy money. And every single service we provide is provided because of the taxpayers' dollars that are out there. And we do, as part of our pillars, we are fiscally responsible. We are perhaps one of the most fiscally responsible counties in the state of Minnesota. I will stand by that. And so in being fiscally responsible, we have to levy what is responsible. Now, if we don't like the levy, we need to stop spending. Okay? It's pretty simple, pretty simple. So anyways, I will conclude my comments there, and I'm sure there's plenty of others that want to make comment. Who's first? Commissioner Schulte?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I will start out by saying you and I rarely agree on budgets and levies, but we agree this year. For many of the statements you just made, first I want to touch on the $50 million in reserves that Commissioner Reiner refers to, and he doesn't use the term, he uses surplus. But let's look at that number in reality. That's in our asset preservation account, which was designed and developed to enhance our assets and repair our assets as they fail. And that's parking lots, roofs, buildings, elevators, and it goes on. I mean, it's a long list of what that account was designed for. And it feeds our 1-year plan, that feeds our 5-year plan, that feeds our 10-year plan. That's a well-thought-out plan that was put together by Facilities. When I came on the county board, Facilities was in disarray. Andrew had just recently been hired and was just starting to put together all these asset preservation plans. Now, if we consider that $50 million truly surplus, that means we're not going to do $24 million worth of project, or $20,707,000 worth of projects that we're already committed to for this year. And those are the Rum River Decentralization Project, police radios for the sheriff's squad cars. There's a number of those. I mean, and the list is long. I'm not going to read them all. It's just an example. Because at the end of this year, if we live up to what we committed to on our asset preservation account, we're down to $24,800,000 at the end of this year. And that's what that account was designed for. It was not designed to buy down levies. And I'm going to stand by that. I've stood by it in the past. If we go back to dissolving the asset preservation account to buy down levies, then we're going to go back to bonding twice a year. I can tell you how that worked, because when I came on the county board, we were $191 million in debt because we bonded twice a year. And we put a halt to that. We stopped doing that. And suddenly we're at roughly $42 million in debt. So our credit card bills are almost paid off and scheduled to be paid off by 2025 or 6, something like that, maybe 2027, except for the new expenses that may come on. We may have to bond for a jail, parking ramp as previously described. I don't want to go back to that. I think we need the asset preservation account. I think it serves its purpose. I don't consider those surplus dollars. With that, I will just reiterate that I will be supporting the 15.44% levy increase this year.
Commissioner Meisner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and so some of your comments, and you've been always very consistent about your, your financial position. And I would just say that it's not an either or thing, it's an and thing. So yes, you mentioned a lot of factors that are out of our control, out of anyone's control when it comes to a budget. You're absolutely right. And what we do with the 0% levy increase, it does in fact affect the future decisions that we're able to make. My training has been that the levy specifically is revenue, mostly like 75 to 80% for workforce, meaning their wages and healthcare. So these are ongoing expenses that get more expensive, every year, just like any other industry. So on average, let's say it's a 3% cost of living increase. So to keep up, just to maintain, would be 3% levy increase. So we haven't done that in 3 years. In the average of 10 years, I don't know what exactly the percentage of it, but we are consistently choosing to have a 0% or the lowest possible increase. So, okay, we choose that. So that means at some point in the future, which is where we are today, then this is what we're looking at. So when you talk about being, sustainable, that is what I am saying. Because it's not really helpful to do, 3 or 5 years of zero, and then now we're talking about a 15.44 as a cap for our residents. It is, my opinion, is more responsible and stable if you can just kind of, gradually level it out versus these up and downs, get as low as you possibly can until you can't, which then means you have to really make up for lost money and losses. So we disagree about financial philosophies in general, but it is not an either or thing, it is an and thing, and absolutely our past decisions have brought us to today.
Commissioner Reinert.
Yeah, just some comments here on what's been said. And, I guess, it might be just a fundamental difference of agreement of how a government should run. I don't think you should overtax people every single year, pile it up into a fund, which is then surplus, call it something like asset preservation, and then pretend like you have to preserve assets with that. And that the only way to preserve assets is out of those overtaxed dollars that you took from the people and put in that fund. I mean, you could call it the Starving Children Fund. Well, then if you take it out and do something with the budget and pay down the budget, it makes it sound like you're killing children. It's named incorrectly. It should be the Overtaxed Fund, because these are funds that we overtaxed the residents and then put it into a fund. Call it whatever you want. Do whatever you want with it. But it is dollars that we overtaxed the residents for. Why not do that? Why not pile up a bunch of money and then spend it every way? Well, because we didn't tell the residents that we were going to do that. We taxed the residents for a specific purpose, did not use it for that specific purpose. And we should give it back somehow. And how you can give it back is by buying down a budget, like I'm suggesting we do with some of those dollars. And Commissioner Minor's correct. It's not one or the other. It's not get rid of this fund and only do it this other way that they used to do it, bonding twice a year. Who said that? Who's even talking about that? No one's talking about that. But buying things as you go is a better way to go, especially when you're talking about funds in a government account, because government doesn't get the kind of return that the private sector gets. They usually get under, which means the dollars that sit around in a fund lose value. Inflation over the last 2 years has been 15%. We have that $50 million sitting in that account, which means $7,500,000 or $7,500,000 in value disappeared over the last 2 years. It wouldn't have disappeared, those tax dollars, had we, did what we were supposed to do last year and actually take the $12 million that we told staff to pay down the budget with. They didn't do that. And now we're not even talking about using that extra $7 million, much less the $50 million that's in there. I hope we talk more about it. I hope we use some of those dollars. It's not a sin to bond for things. I think that the level of bonding that this county drew up to, almost $200 million, was irresponsible. But I think that if you walked both paths, that you wouldn't have to bond that high, and you wouldn't have this valuation of this huge fund disappearing just because of inflation. And like I said, could just boil down to a fundamental difference in how you think things should run around here. But I just don't think we should be taxing people for specific reasons and then not doing those things. And if you have the money left over, figure out a way to get it back to them. And to Commissioner Schulte's point, spending these dollars on asset preservation is a way of actually doing that. But we should be doing more. We can do that, and we can buy down the budget. We should not be holding $50 million in a fund. I don't disagree with everything that Commissioner Schulte said. We just have a maybe a little fundamental difference on some of the fine points. So,
Commissioner Schulte.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. I just want to make it clear that the 50 million we keep referring to are not our taxpayers' dollars. We didn't take them from the levy. As been pointed out, our levy's been flat, 0.0% increase for 3 years in a row. These are your grandchildren's and your great-grandchildren's tax dollars that came in through CARES and ARPA dollars. Those are the dollars we're talking about. These are future tax dollars way out in the future that we've collected and we are holding in our asset preservation account to build buildings, fix buildings, offset, essentially offsetting future levy dollars. Otherwise, we got a levy for all that stuff. We got a levy to decentralize the Rum River. We got a levy to buy sheriff's radios. We've got all that stuff we'd have to levy for. Instead, we're going to use the CARES and ARPA dollars that we put away for those projects. So it's just, I want to be very clear with the taxpayer. We have not over-collected. We have been 0.0 for 3 years, and I believe we've been 8.5% over a decade, total levy increase. That's very reasonable. That's the second lowest in the 7-county metro area over a 10-year period.
I got Commissioner Jepsen, Meisner, and Reinert.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm struggling so hard with this levy because we talk about we can't look back and we couldn't control inflation, which I completely understand and 100% agree with. There were things and decisions made when I was not around that I don't know if I would have supported, probably would have with the Helios and getting people paid their, the market rate wages. And those are decisions that were made 3 years ago, over the last 3 years, that we can't do anything about now. What's done is done, but we can learn from those decisions. And learning from those decisions, in my mind, is understanding what the severity of extremes is. And I think personally, again, disagree with me, that's fine. I think the extremes of the zero year after year, knowing from staff, from seeing presentations that were given year after year, projecting a $5 million default, projecting an $18 million default, projecting for this year a $32 million default. You see those trends, and you have to make decisions based on those trends. And using the surplus dollars, fine, use those. I agree with Commissioner Reinert. If we're gonna tax folks, let's use their tax dollars and not increase the levy. I think 15.44 is way too high. I think we can be creative. I think there's other opportunities that I'm gonna work very hard over these next few months, if this passes today, to lower that. Because I think we cannot put, from lessons learned from this board, which I am now honorably a part of, we can't continue to burden taxpayers and staff for decisions that we've made if there's a surplus. And correct me if I'm wrong. So you mentioned that the asset preservation, we have never used those dollars to buy down the levy. So that $5 million, that was projected?
yes, we have.
We have, right, okay, so I misheard you because I thought you said we don't use asset preservation to buy down the levies.
Mr. Chair, just a quick reply.
From a policy standpoint, we don't want to.
Just a quick reply in the middle of your statement, I apologize.
no.
It's a policy we developed that we have defied a couple of times.
Okay. Out of necessity,
Yes.
right? Okay. So, so I respect I think it was very smart to set up the asset preservation account. I think that's a great place to put dollars for the purpose of buildings and maintenance and repair for a lot of buildings that are really struggling right now. And that's great. I do agree that something else needs to be established for this surplus I don't like Commissioner Reinert's recommendation about the children's fund. But something needs to be set aside for those surplus dollars that we get, that we need to have unrestricted for unusual situations that we can't control. Inflation being one of those, extreme inflation being one of those, which we've experienced over the last few years. Now, I do understand, I do agree with the comment that every year we have a surplus, but unfortunately that surplus is getting less and less while the expenses are getting greater and greater. So the distance, the gap is getting wider, thus we have the increase in those gaps year after year after year compounding. So we do need to get the spending figured out. We do need to increase the levy because we don't have an alternative because the money's gone. But I just think there are more creative, better ways that we can make those decisions without going from the extreme of 0 to 15%. I think there's a much progressive, more stable way of doing it over time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Meisner.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to, I guess, make commentary. So obviously my amendment did not pass, but I did want to make very clear that now that we're going to be going over the details of what this looks like, I will, again, be advocating to fully, or to not have any service reductions in 2024, whatever that looks like. I was a little bit confused, though, what you said, Commissioner Schulte, about the asset preservation being like funds for the grandchildren, and those are ARPA and CARE dollars, because those are finite, and we have to spend them within X amount. And we've always had the asset preservation that you guys established long before federal dollars came in. So I was a little bit confused about what you said about that. It's holding there kind of right now, but that has nothing to do really with what we're talking about of asset preservation. And then in terms of just, when we're talking about no increases to our levy, it doesn't mean we don't collect taxes. So I did just want to make that point because it sounds a little confusing sometimes, I think, the way that we are talking about budgeting and 0% levy increases. We're still collecting taxes, and we're actually still getting an increase of those levies. It's just we're deciding not to increase the levy percentage from the year before.
Yes, Commissioner
Mr.
Schulte.
Chair, just to address
I
that,
think I was next.
I was going to answer her question.
This is a follow-up.
Oh, well, I had a follow-up to him too.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yes, Commissioner Meisner, what I was referring to in the asset preservation account is we took in large sums from CARES and from ARPA to be used specifically for mitigation of coronavirus issues on whatever their grants and their funds allowed us to use it for.
Right.
Many of those dollars, a great percentage of that 50 million came in from ARPA and CARES. So it wasn't collected from our taxpayers, it was money printed in Washington, D.C. And our future generations will pay that money. That's what
Oh,
was
I
getting
see what you're saying. Okay.
our
okay.
future generations are going to pay for all the money that was printed.
Right.
That's the money that's in asset preservation. And we will disseminate it throughout the county to offset those dollars in the future, but they will still be collected by our future generations.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And again, but those funds are finite because we have to spend them on a timeline.
Did you still have a comment, Commissioner Reiner?
Yeah, I'd like to get in here. So as is the case a lot of times when things are stated on this board, it's either one side or the other. There's no middle like was just stated. We either go with asset preservation account or we're going to have to bond twice a year. And the truth is usually in the middle. And so the misstatement that the asset preservation account is just ARPA and CARE dollars is not true. That's not a true thing. The asset preservation account actually existed before those dollars were dreamed up. And so just based on that, it can't be true that the only dollars that are in there came from ARPA and from CARES. And so our residents are being overtaxed. I mean, just the example of the last few years. We've had a 10, 12, 14% vacancy in positions at the county here. But we do bond for each one of those positions. So in the beginning of the year, when we say, okay, we need to fund all these positions, we go and we levy and we get those dollars. If we don't fill those positions, those dollars are left over because we didn't spend them. And at the end of the year, that comes to a sizable sum. And some of those dollars end up in asset preservation. Some of them float into, because of policies that were established, prior to me getting here. Some of those dollars are used for different pots along the way to, feed different activity that goes on. But if there's dollars left over, then they end up in asset preservation. And so, once again, we have a situation where, the statement is true. Some of those dollars came from ARPA and CARES, but it has been a practice for a long time in the county to take dollars that were levied and not spent, which then are surplus, and then put them into asset preservation and spend them on other things. I would like to advocate for, more bonding than we're doing. This bonding twice a year isn't a good thing, but we can have asset preservation and bonding. I just don't like, $50, $60 million sitting around losing value. And it's just too easy, actually, for some projects too, even if it is under the category of asset preservation. When you've got $50, $60 million sitting around and somebody comes to you with a project, hey, can I remodel this? Can I do that? And it's maybe not something that is greatly needed, but we've got the dollars. I know when I go to an art fair, if I've got an extra $300 in my pocket, I'm coming home with some $150 something that I didn't need just because I had the money. And I use that example because that's maybe what happens sometimes with $50 million sitting around, that a project comes around that maybe should be vetted a little bit more, but since you have the money, you just spend it. If you do bond, you do go through a more stringent vetting of the project, and I think probably are a little bit more fiscally responsible with the taxpayer dollars.
Okay, I will just remind everyone that in 2026, the Asset Preservation Fund goes negative based on projects that we have already slated to build and use that money for. So it's not like it's sitting there and just indefinitely, going to sit there and be eroded away with inflation, as was indicated. So these are very real projects that we have scheduled that we would have to bond for otherwise. And when you bond, you increase your levy to pay for debt service and everything else to go with that. And there's costs to do that. And by the way, right now, the interest rate to bond is not that attractive as it was in the past. So if we can use cash to do these things, it would be advisable to use cash to do these things and to levy for our ongoing expenditures every single year. So I've got Commissioner Jepson, then I've got Commissioner.
Well, I'd like to respond to what you said. I've got a follow-up.
Is it a quick one?
Yeah, it's a quick one.
Okay.
Those dollars are on a piece of paper. They are not dedicated. They're designated, and there's a big difference. They're just written down on a piece of paper on a wish list. And so it is not dedicated yet. It is just designated. It's been a conversation. And so those dollars are not spent yet.
Well, there's certain projects like up at the 4th Avenue tunnels and that have to be replaced. It's not a wish list. That has to get done, and it's very costly. And
They're
so
not dedicated. They're designated.
well, they're pretty much dedicated because that project is happening regardless.
Big difference.
So, I got Commissioner Jepson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just speaking on the asset preservation, so CARES and federal dollars are very, very restricted for the purpose of their intended. And I guarantee you, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm almost 100% certain that the federal government would not allow us to use CARE dollars to buy down our levy and to pay our reserves, to backfill our reserves based on the percentage that this board has had precedence in maintaining, legally so. So I just want to make it clear that those piggybacking on what Commissioner Reinert was saying, those asset preservation dollars, some of them are designated based on the requirements outlined by the federal government, but those dollars, yes, for projects for the Rum River campus, for our finance software, things like that, yes, they're dedicated to that, but there's far more, in my understanding, from the numbers I've seen, the information I've been given, that are just surplus, that can be used to buy down the levy.
I got Rhonda Silveraja here.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, just want to give clarification to the ARPA CARES discussion, because yes, there are timelines and requirements associated with those. When we levied for 2020, we didn't know that the pandemic was going to be a thing. So we levied for public safety wages, we levied for public health wages, then CARES was passed, and we were able to claim those wages and expenses against the federal CARES grant and subsequently against the federal ARPA grant. So we were able to pay it out of the federal dollars rather than the local dollars. So then those local dollars freed up to be able to, so it wasn't necessarily the overtaxing, it was a shifting of who was paying for what.
I got Commissioner Meisner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just something you had commented earlier, that asset preservation would be bankrupt in 2026. So potentially, it could be bankrupt in 2025, 2026, as you stated, but that directly correlates to how we budget and use the levy. So I do want to just articulate that too. It's not necessarily a guaranteed thing unless we make or I should say, it's correlated with the decisions that we were making with the levy of what that asset preservation ability to do in the future, what that looks like.
I do want to correct one misstatement. We made some expenditures back in 2023, which are translated into 2024. Specifically, the wage corrections that were indicated, inflation, and that is not something that you could anticipate 3 years ago. This was a moment in time when we made these expenditures, and they're coming to roost today. So you can't say, well, we should have had a 3% levy back 3 years ago and 3% to levy things out, level things out, so that then we could have accounted for expenditures we didn't even know were going to exist yet. I think that's just not even a logical statement. So yes, if you knew you had the expenditures and you didn't account for that, that would be irresponsible. But we did not know that. We did not have even the Helios report back yet on those 3 years to even be able to say, well, there needs to be wage corrections or whatever the case is. So that's fundamentally a misstatement, but it's all right. That's what we're doing here, is we're talking about misstatements. Commissioner Schulte.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to correct, I showed you a chart here that you quoted for asset preservation being bankrupt in 2026. That chart actually is if we are using $10 million to buy down the levy. If we don't use it to buy down the levy, asset preservation is solvent through 2028,
Okay.
according to the chart. I just wanted, we're fact-based here. I wanted to make sure that.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Reiner.
And does that also show dollars coming into that account, coming into that fund?
No, that does not show any dollars coming into that fund. We cannot calculate what those dollars are. We do know that the years in the past, I think asset preservation around 11 to 15 million some dollars historically, and that's been closing. That gap's been closing.
But that does not assume dollars coming in. So if you can't calculate dollars coming in, you can't calculate when it's going to be empty.
You can based on the information you have
Dollars,
today, yes.
well, if you take away all of the input, that happens every single year to the tune of 8 digits plus. Yes, it's going to empty. It's going to empty. You take away.
I think
That's
it'll be.
not even reasonable to like put that information out and say that's accurate and something to refer to.
Okay, I would suggest you're going to be surprised at how much, quote, surplus you might be seeing in the future years here, because it's getting razor thin. I got Commissioner Jepson, or Commissioner Gamache.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thought I would join in to the discussion.
Pull them up. Pull up your boots.
I know that we had talks about inflation, and we've talked about the Helios project and increasing the salaries for our employees. And one of the main reasons we did that is because we were losing employees. We were losing a lot of employees. We were having a hard time attracting and being able to pay new as salaries were increasing all across the Twin Cities Metro. And we were not only losing to Hennepin and Ramsey counties, but we were losing to smaller counties. We were losing to the cities. I know that there's we talked about the dollars that came from the central salary pool that were put into different savings, and that we maybe should have, I'm not sure if the insinuation at the time was that we should maybe reduce that a number of employees, but some of those were the sheriffs, the deputies that we couldn't hire. We couldn't find enough people to fill the positions that the sheriff had. But they were, yeah, and that caused overtime, you're right. And so we needed to do that, and the sheriff kept those in the budget, and because we were always looking. And we've been looking within IT, we've been looking within parks, we've been looking within all of the departments because it's been difficult to hire. So Helios was a project that was needed. We needed it actually to help with the new software because we were so outdated in HR. So we were able to get that through. And now as we talk about bonding and moving forward, the very real issue beyond what we're talking about just today is that we have an outdated jail that needs to be replaced. We've been talking about it since 2016, 2017, when Sheriff Stewart was here, and how this needed to be done. And we face the very real possibility of hearing from the Department of Corrections in the state of Minnesota to say, you better build the jail now. And it's going to go wherever we tell you it's going to go, because that's been done in the state of Minnesota. It's been done up in Grand Rapids and other counties. I think Bemidji might be in the next hairs of the Department of Corrections. But we can't wait too much longer, and we're working very diligently with the city of Anoka to move that forward. But yes, that is going to be bonding dollars, and we may need to bond for a new parking ramp if we put the jail where the old parking ramp is. So that's more bonding dollars. What we have to fix right now is the inflation issues, our salary structure issues, and we can either say we're going to take money from asset preservation, and that'll help ease the pain a little bit, but you got to fix the bottom first. You got to fix everything that's in the situation of the salaries that you've increased and that the people that you've hired, and then also what inflation is doing out there. And you cannot always do it by putting in what some have called surplus dollars. Others have just called one-time dollars, because the one-time dollars don't keep coming all the time. So I would like to make sure that we fix the base. And that is not going to be easy, but we sometimes have to do those things. And then you hopefully down the years, you'll start to see that levy continue to go down as we fix the base issue. I'm not going to go back and say we shouldn't have done zero the last 3 years. There are arguments, and I heard Commissioner Meisner even said the philosophy, and she's right, there's a philosophy as how you want to do this. But I'm not going to go back and say we should have done that, because right now we're where we're at. And this is what we need to fix. So I'm going to support this today. Would rather that was lower, but it's not. So let's move forward and then see what we can do over the next 3 or 2 months, 2.5 months until December. If there's anything that we see that is available. But I really want to make sure we fix this base so that next year it's not, okay, guess what? Now we have another 10, 12%.
Yes.
That's not going to be any easier. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Brassad?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it's evident, if you're watching this and listening to this, we come at this with 7 different perspectives. You can look at the whole area and we all feel passionate about one thing or another, and that's good. What this does show the public is that we've had some really good and hard discussions on this, because this is probably, in all my years of public service, this is the hardest budget that I've seen. And knowing that, it's not all doom and gloom. to the viewing public, please stay tuned because we have two agenda items coming up where we're not going to have a levy, where we're going to be able to eliminate and no regional rail levy, no public safety levy. So those are some good things that will help to offset this big increase. But we have, like it's been said, I don't want to rehash everything, but a couple of the reasons that we're in this point where we are exactly today is the inflation. Those fixed costs, well over $20 million. Things that we have to have that we pay for, contracts, gas, salt, you name it. Families are seeing the increase, inflation effects, and it's huge on our organization. That's well over $20 million. I'm thrilled that we were able to finally adjust the salaries. That was something that was important to me. I'm glad we could expedite it and start having less turnover and not have the reputation of, oh, Anoka County, no one stays there because of salaries. Commissioner Gamache and I were just at a city council meeting a couple weeks ago where a council member called us out on that reputation. And so we did explain what we're doing to adjust that. I do believe that those adjustments were long overdue, and now we have to pay for them. So that's our dilemma. I would prefer to spread it out over a couple of years, not do a 15.44, but take this year in our 24, 25 and spread it out a little bit. Use asset preservation because I believe employees are our greatest asset. That we would not exist without our employees. So we have an account called asset preservation that I would like to use some of that to level out the next couple of years. We know and we've seen our cities in our county, their preliminary levy increases. And almost every city is pretty significant.
Double digit.
So if we could feather it out a little bit, that would be my preference. And while I am talking, I do want to thank Corey, Yvonne, Kathy, and everyone in finance. This budget season has been extremely challenging, and for them, we come up with ideas. They go back and they have to redo all their figures. They have to do new slides with every suggestion that we have. So Corey and staff, I just really want to make a huge thank you. You know, it's amazing. We saw in chairs reports how great our staff is. You know, we had the state award for job training. We had a national award for our forensics lab. We have the best staff ever. I mean, Commissioner Schulte and I were out learning how to drive a snowplow last week. And there's 6 or 7 new snowplow drivers. And all of these, every single person that is employed by Anoka County helps to make us run seamlessly. Every now and then there's a little blip, but overall, staff is what makes us strong. They're our greatest asset, so I'm for using asset preservation to feather that levy out.
Commissioner Schulte.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I know we've all been through a lot of work in the last few months on the budget, not the least of which staff has done their amount of work, and Commissioner Breasted pointed them out and recognized them accordingly. But it's been tough on all of us as well. I can tell you from all the meetings we've been through and the ones we're about to go through, very few people are shifting from their original points of view. I'm going to make a very quick statement on my point of view, and then I would hope everyone does the same thing so we can call the question and get this thing voted on and figure it out in the next couple of months how much further we can come down from this. I want to reiterate one point, and that is we're not looking at this levy increase because of anything that happened in 2021, 2020, previous years. We're not talking about those levies because they have nothing to do with it. We're talking about what we spent in this budget. That's what it's about. It's about what made this budget balloon. And this budget ballooned, seriously. And that was because we believe in our people and we chose to compensate them for it. We made a huge change. And I can tell you who on this board voted for that. and thought it was a really good idea. And it was almost all of us, because it was a really good idea. It's important. I'm glad we've done it. But it's time to pay the piper, and I'm willing to do it with a 15.44% increase, which, by the way, does use $7,800 of one-time dollars, whether that's, I believe it's $6,000 of ARPA and $1,800 of public safety.
You mean millions.
I'm sorry. I got the chart here. But at any rate, yes, it uses 1.8 million of public safety dollars and $6 million of ARPA dollars to get us to a position where we can do 15.44. So this isn't all levy. We are bringing in one-time money to make that happen. With that, Mr. Chair, I won't call the question with respect to my fellow commissioners that may want one last bite at the apple.
Well, I just want to comment that, that we are looking at a budget here. We have some interesting times out there that are happening that will help to allow this sort of an increase to be softened. Commissioner Brasted kind of indicated we're going to be talking about a regional rail levy here. Commissioner Meisner indicated that, you should want to clarify that it's not zero levy, it's zero increase levy. Well, in the regional rail discussion, it is zero levy, zero, meaning no more levy for the Regional Rail Authority. And I joked a little bit, I don't think you've ever heard of that in the history of the US, that there's a zero levy or taxes go away, but in fact, they did just go away, or they will be going away. So that helps to offset the bottom line on your property taxes. There is a shift that's gonna happen between residential, commercial, industrial. I call it the waterbed concept, where when one goes down, the other one goes up to bear the kind of the expense, if you will, or the burden. And that's going to be shifting away from residential in this coming year, as we've seen massive increases in commercial industrial properties out there. And so that helps to somewhat soften the blow. But it should not be any mistake made here in knowing that this is what is being proposed is a rip the Band-Aid off moment to try and set it, as Commissioner Gamache indicated, set it to the new base, and then you don't have the radical increases the following year unless we proceed to go through the same spending that we went through, which I would highly discourage. So anyways, it is a tough decision. However, given some of the moving parts that are out there and some of the other decisions that were made, it helps to soften some of that. And I think someone said that the average house, which I struggle to believe because I don't know that those numbers are really what represent average, but a $370,000, $390,000 house will see $30-some increase or something like that a year. I would probably figure it'll be more than that, but for most of the houses that are out there. But at any rate, there are very specific expenses that were made, expenditures that were made, and we have to pay for them. Bottom line. So I got Commissioner Meisner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just my last, I'll just reiterate it. So Commissioner Schulte talked about one-time funding to public safety and ARPA funds. So again, whatever we spend out of one-time funding, whether we call that asset preservations, ARPA funding, public safety money, I mean, the funds that we have for that one time, if we're spending it for ongoing expenses, we're going to have the same bill and cost next year.
Plus 3%.
Right. But my point is, again, the choices that we're making is going to affect the decisions that we make in the following years. And so thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Reiner, final comments?
To a certain extent. You can't call dollars one-time dollars that reoccur every year. And we have been calling dollars that reoccur every year one-time dollars. And so it's partially correct. I mean, because the dollars that do come in fluctuate up and down. It's been talked during this conversation that they're going down. That's not a constant. I mean, they could then, for some reason, go up. Every single year is different. Every single year is different. And so, there's a lot of platitudes being, talked about up here. Every single year is different.
Okay. Commissioner Jepson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to, as Commissioner Brasted mentioned, there are 7 people up here with 7 very different ideas, opinions, and I just wanted to make a comment regarding not about, Mr. Chair, your comment about looking at previous years. We have to look at previous years. We have to constantly look at previous years, whether you like the information or not. I mean, we're looking at previous years from bonding practices. And and I think the majority of us agree, bonding twice a year regardless is not a good idea. But we have to look at the past in order to make future quality decisions. So just to disregard the last 3 years, I think is a struggle because it shows a trend. You know, you debate whether it's a trend or an occurrence. If the inflation was just an occurrence, yes, that's a blip on the map. But it was a trend. And if we're not looking at those things when we're making these massive decisions for the 4th largest county in the state, we're doing a disservice. We really are. And I don't, I've said it before, I think the 15.44 is too high. I said it during our last workshop. I think there's ways to even it out, make it a little bit more stable with that increase, because a huge increase, residents and businesses were very burdened over the last 3 years. That has not changed. So to do such an extreme increase and stick with it even into December, I'm not going to support. And just to clarify, you did mention a $30 increase for a $390,000 house. I think that was a previous percentage given, a lower percentage given. I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that at a 15.44, it'd be more around $100 per household. Even more. 120 per person. So just wanted to clarify that.
That's annually though, right?
Annually.
Okay. Well, I think it's obvious that not only have we invested a lot of time in working on the budget this year and considering everything that we need to consider, but we are certainly committed to looking at it even further here until December to try and figure out ways to try and reduce it. We have that option to reduce it, and we will certainly be looking at all the suggestions that were here today and probably more, and we will be committed to doing that. So, all righty. So we've got a resolution before us that I've offered. If there's no further discussion, roll call vote.
Commissioner Gamache,
Aye.
Commissioner Jepson,
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner,
Aye.
Commissioner Brassad,
Nay.
Commissioner Reiner,
Nay.
Commissioner Schulte,
Aye.
Commissioner Look.
Aye. And that passes with 2 in opposition. We will move on to item number 10 now, which is the resolution adopting a proposed public safety levy for program year 2024. You'll see that before you there. Is
I'll
there,
offer the resolution.
okay, the resolution's been offered by Commissioner Gamache. Discussion on this one. Any discussion on this one? Okay,
Mr. Chair.
yes, Commissioner
Yeah,
Schulte.
for clarity, the public safety levy that we had levied for years was to most recently fund our communications system, our public safety data system. And that was specifically to pay back essentially the money to put together that system with the Anoka County Joint Law Enforcement Council. That contract and billing period is done. We've got the system, it's up and running. And frankly, I'm being told it's ready to be replaced again already. But all that aside, it's a whole different conversation. The legislature did allow or pass a bill that would allow us to continue a levy if we choose to do that. I believe that comes before the Intergovernmental Committee soon, and they'll be able to vote on that, and then it'll come, if we decide to levy at any point, if joint law tells us they need something, they could come to us and we could actually levy for it or bond for it.
And interesting enough, when we paid for that, that system, it was paid for with asset preservation dollars used as somewhat of a bank, so we didn't have to go out and bond for that, and then the levy was used to pay us back in that, for that amount. But I will read the second whereas there. It says, whereas the Joint Law Enforcement Council has determined it does not have any current projects that need funding and is not requesting any funding for 2024. So there is no funding for the public safety levy in 2024, as folks will have seen on their property tax statements in prior years. Commissioner Meisner?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Schulte, for expanding on this, because this may or may not be true in future years, meaning we might in fact be levying in the future, but right now, as stated, the Joint Law Enforcement Council does not have any current project, but obviously that could change.
That could change, then we have that decision before us as to whether we will levy for that, as I understand. Okay, I will do a roll call vote on this one too.
Commissioner Jepson,
Aye.
Commissioner Meisner,
Aye.
Commissioner Gamache,
Aye.
Commissioner Brassad,
Aye.
Commissioner Reinert,
Aye.
Commissioner Schulte,
Aye.
Commissioner Look.
Aye. And that passes unanimously. That is item 10. We will go on to consider for informational purposes. Item 11, No County Board of Commissioners will hold a public meeting on November 30th, 2023 at 6 p.m. and window the budget, at which the budget and the levy for 2024 will be considered, and at which the public will have an opportunity to speak on the 2024 proposed budget. So mark that time down, November 30th at 6 p.m. And if you, as the public, want to come in and comment on it, you're certainly welcome to do so. It's not a time for the board members to respond, although staff will be here to answer any questions, but we are here to take public comment on that. We'll move on to item 12, which is committee appointments. The first one is consider appointing or reappointing the following to the Community Corrections Advisory Board for 2-year terms expiring September 2025. And the first one is reappointing Morgan White Rabbit, representing District 5. And the second one is appointing Amir Malik, representing District 6. Is there a motion for those appointments?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Gamache, second by Commissioner Reinert. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Those appointments are made. Item B is consider reappointing Rita Cho as a Community Health Representative to the Adult Mental Health Advisory Committee for a 3-year term expiring September 2026. Is there a motion to approve that appointment?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Jepson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Brasted. Any discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion is approved. And the third one is consider appointing myself as the county board representative on the Fogarty Ice Arena Board of Directors for the remainder of 2023, replacing Blair Buccioni pursuant to the real property lease agreement contract number 2008-0151.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Brasta. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Schulte. Discussion on this one. We had appointed Blair Buccioni as part of the requirement of our contract or our property lease agreement to represent the county, and as doing so, he was to report back to the county on the dealings of the Fogarty Ice Arena as per that agreement. There seems to be some misunderstanding as far as whether the Fogarty Ice Arena needs to make a motion and accept our appointment, of which the property lease agreement does not speak to. So there's been a little maybe lack of understanding perhaps from somewhere on this. And so it's very disappointing to me that this person that we voted for and passed at this board was not welcomed on that board in terms of doing the work for us. And it's unfortunate that that he ended up resigning. So with that being said, I will consider the work. We're pretty busy the way it is. I will consider the work and try and sort out whatever complications we have with this Fogarty Ice Arena. I've got Commissioner Gamache and then Commissioner Reinert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I stated the last time we talked about this for Mr. Buccioni's appointment, is I'm just curious as, and I know that the county attorney has given us some information, but it just seems to me like we don't really have a role, or probably shouldn't have a role with this group, but I know that there is something in the legalese that still has us in there. And I would really kind of prefer us to get out. I'm not sure exactly what I don't want any financial difficulties. I don't want anything like that they're expecting. And I might be just speaking as someone who was a mayor at the time, and when we asked for the county board back in 2002 to give us money for our ice arena, we were told, no, we don't do that anymore. So, and I think the city of Coon Rapids may have heard the same thing at some point in time from the county board at that time. So I'm just wondering, and I would like to see us get out of having even a role on this, because I'd rather let Fogarty take care of their board. But I'm sure Commissioner Look can handle talking to them and seeing what's going on.
Commissioner Reinert.
Yeah, so it's my understanding that some years ago, I think decades, the county put up $200,000, I believe it was, to help this organization get started. We had representation on the board, which made sense to watch our dollars, make sure that they were spent properly. They've been spent for decades. And so I'd have to agree with Commissioner Gamache that, you know, kind of the time has come for us not to need to be on there anymore. I mean, it has no affiliation with the county whatsoever, as I understand it. They're an independent entity, and we helped them get going because, you know, I guess ice time was important to have for kids back then. It was probably a good move. I don't know all those details, but it's over with. So kind of wonder why we are even represented on the board. There was some static, I guess, disappointment that we had caused on the board. And I guess I have to ask, has there been communication with the Board of Directors, Fogarty Ice Arena Board of Directors, about your appointment? And would that be acceptable to them since they believe that they have to take some kind of action to accept the appointment? Would there be
good question.
would there be continued static, or have they been communicated with at all about you know, what's happening with this action?
They've been communicated to, or not the board, the administrator over there. I've spoken to him about Blair Buccioni's scenario, and they have not been able to resolve that evidently in-house, so.
Recently?
This
Like
would have
within the
been,
last couple of weeks?
no,
Okay, so they don't have any idea that you might be the new representative?
no. No, generally speaking, when we appoint people to boards, we don't call up the board and say, hey, can we appoint this person? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, generally.
Generally.
But with this one, there's been, for some reason, and I don't understand
And-
all the dynamics of static about.
Right. There's been some static, and I certainly,
Communication usually can resolve those kind of issues.
and I certainly think that we've expressed our position on the matter. They have neglected to accept our position on the matter, and it may boil down to a declaratory action if need be. But the bottom line is that we have an agreement in which we have a representative, and a representative reports back to us, and that is fulfilling the function of that agreement. So until that agreement changes, we're going to fulfill our responsibilities under that agreement. And so this is part and parcel what it takes to do that. I've got Commissioner Meisner, then Jepson.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so I won't repeat the comments that have already been made around this issue. I mean, personally, I have not had recent discussions, but the last time that I talked to some members of the Fogarty board, to the point there's static, or I'll say conflict, it does not seem like it is necessary for this board to have an appointee. So, I mean, I would like to just postpone this altogether, or if we are voting on it, then I won't be able to support it.
I'll second the postponement.
But yeah, I'm surprised to see this back up, quite honestly. So that's just where I stand. So no, right? But
Was that a motion to postpone?
yes,
All right,
Yes.
I'd like to second that.
Okay, we got a postponement in front of us here. No debate on that. All those in favor of a postponement signify by saying aye.
aye.
All those opposed? Opposed. Okay, so the postponement fails. I think the role can be determined once I'm able to get in there and figure out if it's even needed at all. At that point, I can report back with a you know, suggestion one way or the other, or whatever the case may be. So we just don't know that at this point. I got Commissioner Gamache first.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And that's the reason I voted to move forward and not go with the postponement. I think we need to have that discussion, and we'll bring the board, put the board chair in there, let them talk, figure out how exactly they want it taken care of, and let's get moving on it, because we have not had that discussion, and they were not talking with Mr. Buccioni. So that's the reason why I voted to not go with the postpone. Let's get moving on this so we can finish, you know, get to the final and figure out if we need to actually be involved.
Got Commissioner Jepson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm just really disappointed that this is back. It's unfortunate to hear of Mr. Buccioni's experience that, you know, but I haven't heard of, I've only heard one side of the argument. So I think before we go in there in full force to demand that a solution be realized or acceptance of a new person appointed, I just think this is so simple that we can just sit down and have a conversation with this board,
and figure this out. I don't know why it's so hard, and why then, if they don't accept it, then sue us. There has to be a common ground to resolve this small nonprofit board. I think going full steam ahead with an appointment is just going to designate to them that we're the county and you do as you say, and there is no negotiation involved. And I just think the message that it sends, we've been talking a lot about optics today, and I think the optics for this specific item is very poor if we're just going to move forward with making this appointment with no sign of compromise and only rigidity, which is only what I'm hearing. If there is compromise, then why make the appointment? Let's just wait, let's talk it through, figure it out, and then when we're ready, I mean, thank you for your willingness to serve, but don't we want to have someone who has the time, who has the desire, who has the knowledge? Not to say
We
that you
did.
don't.
We did.
I know, but then we should have known what was going on, and then we should have fixed that. And now things are super broken, and we're just going to insert ourselves in not repairing it, but just potentially making a statement saying, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to stick to it. And I'm just not happy with that.
Okay. All righty, further discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor of considering myself as the appointment to this Fogarty Ice Arena Board of Directors signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Nay.
Aye.
Okay, so that passes on a 4-3. I will report back to the board then how this goes down. And we will be able to live up to our agreements. Okay, and I think that is the last item on our agenda today. If there's nothing else to come before our board, we will stand adjourned. Thank you very much.